I have a controversial thought.
Okay. What else is new?
So there is a trend that I think is concerning. Now, I had people on Twitter who surprisingly took this poorly. I know it's a shock. And I brought up the fact that I find it still concerning. The rumors are out there. The murmurs are out there that Travis Konecny's been playing through an injury, and probably not a non-significant injury. And that may have impacted his production here. And I put out on Twitter that just in theory, as of when I did, I think it was like last weekend, Travis Konecny had 4 goals since January 9th. Tippett had 8 goals since January 9th. And just pointing out the fact that they make around $12 million, I think, against the cap this year. And then next year, the extension kicks in for Konecny. And then you're looking at closer to $15 million a year. I want to play a game. Now, I don't want you to look it up. I know Bundy won't. Ant, you have to promise, honor code here.
Mm-hmm.
Owen Tippett makes about $6.2 million over the next, 6 seasons, something like that. We're going to play a game, and that game is going to be Owen Tippett versus Cutter Gauthier. Now, I'm going to throw some stats out, and I want you to determine whether these stats belong to Owen Tippett or to Cutter Gauthier. Okay, now keep in mind, Gauthier has played 5 more games than Tippett has this year, okay? Which player has more goals this season, Owen Tippett or Cutter Gauthier?
I believe it's Tippett, yeah.
Okay, would you guys like to guess the disparity? That is correct. Would you like to guess how many more goals Tippett has than Gauthier this season?
3?
Probably 4, 5.
1.
Okay.
Now, again, he's played in 5 fewer games, so good. He's putting up the goals. Let's go to assists. Who has more assists, Cutter Gauthier or Owen Tippett?
I'm going to probably say Gauthier.
Yeah, I agree on that.
He does. He has 2 more assists. Now, on the season, again, fewer games played. Owen Tippett has 41 total points in 73 games played. Cutter Gauthier has 42 points in 78 games played. Now, you might be wondering why I asked this and why I started the framing around Travis Konecny having 4 goals since January 9th. It's because Cutter Gauthier happens to have 4 goals in the last 2 games. Now, does that matter? I don't know. But this is what I got as the blowback. And Bundy, I want you to explain it to me like I'm 5. There were people who said, well, of course Travis Konecny isn't scoring. He has nobody to play with. He has no centers to play with. I would simply point to Matvei Mishkov and say, these guys both play on the power play. They both get a decent number of minutes. Konecny plays more minutes every night. But what is the rationale? What is an explanation for this drastic drop-off? 4 goals in the course of 3 months. I get that there's a 4 Nations break, but 4 goals is not good. Even if you're hurt, you would think that with all the power play time, he should be scoring more, no?
Yeah, you know what? I really think when I look at Konechny's year, I think in general, I think he just got burned out. I really think he got burned out, whether he played too much or in the early season. Remember, he's not a big guy, right? He's not a big human being, right? So more minutes are going to take its toll on guys that are smaller size players. But it really seemed like from the beginning of the 4 Nations Cup till after that is really when he slid off the cliff in terms of his production. So again, whether they have to maintain that next year or keep a closer eye on it, I mean, you don't want to discourage a guy who put up 20 goals in the first half of the season, but really hadn't turned it on in the second half of the season. So, if he is playing hurt, I admire him for that, for a guy playing through it in a season that's a lost season again with no playoffs. But I really just think that he's just a burned out hockey player.
Yeah, and that's possible. I don't understand the worry about the guy. I mean, yeah, he went through a rough stretch. This happens in hockey, right? This happens over a course of X number of games. Guys have really rough periods. It would be different if Travis Konecny was having a bad year or a bad year and a half. Travis Konecny had a bad 30 games. You're going to have that happen in sports. He's still got a shot with 4 games to go at finishing the season as a point per game player. He's already set a career high in points, career high in assists. Yeah, I mean, you could look at it and say for sure took a step back in the back half of the year. But to sit there, I mean, Owen Tippett to me is a bigger question mark. Like that one is the one I look at and say there's something there that isn't sitting as well with me. But the Konecny thing, I can't. I can't sit there and be, upset at a guy for scoring 4 goals in 30 games, but he's still going to have a chance to be a point per game player for the year. Like that's a hard thing to knock a guy for. Now, if the team was in contention and he was their leading scorer and not putting up points and they end up missing the playoffs because he went cold, I think it's a whole different conversation. But it's a lot.
It's not Elias Pettersson.
Yeah, exactly. I just think that, sometimes that's just the nature of the sport, and especially it really is that more when it's a team that's not really in contention. Here's another thing to put on to him, Russ.
Yeah.
Travis Konecny this season already has played 1,608 minutes of ice time. Mm-hmm. That has already exceeded the most of his career by more than 100 minutes. And there's still 4 games to go. So you see what I'm saying? He's played all 78 games.
Yeah, I was gonna say that he's only ever. Well, yeah, I mean he played 82.
He played 76 last year. He played 82
or something like that.
Yeah, he's done it before. Yeah. Well, but he's averaging over 20 minutes a game. And he's only done that once in his career.
Yeah, his time on ice is the highest.
Yeah, it's high. It's high, right? I mean, so like part of what Bundy is saying is could be it too. Not only is he playing the most ice time that he's had this year, but especially if you're playing through an injury and putting up those kind of minutes, you could kind of understand and kind of see why there's a little bit of a drop off.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason that I bring it up, and it's funny because, again, like dipshits on Twitter, there was some lady who got very upset on Twitter. I don't know if she is like hoping that he's going to sign an autograph for her or send her flowers. I don't know. I don't think he's interested. I would assume he's probably not. But this lady, wanted to make the case that how are you going to score goals if the rest of your team sucks? And I think that the reason that it's a little bit frustrating, or the reason that you kind of put it under the microscope, is just because he's been your leading goal scorer in back-to-back seasons. And that when he was signed to that extension, the idea was that he was probably going to be your leading goal scorer. And listen, he has a chance to still be that leading goal scorer this year, but he's put up 30-plus in back-to-back years, and he put up 31 in like 60 games 2 years ago. So I think there was just kind of the expectation that he was going to potentially take that next step. Now, listen, points are great. 75 points, career high in points, is great. But again, like I think that when you go into it expecting that he's going to be a guy that is going to eclipse that 30-goal mark every year, and it seems highly unlikely that it's going to happen, I get that there are rough patches. I get that there are dry spells, but the question just remains, if you're getting all this time on the power play, and in theory, there are other guys that have been able to pot some goals, you would think that at some point a goal scorer is going to be able to find his way through. I just find it interesting. That's it. The Tippett thing, though, and to your point, is probably more concerning because, sure, he's at 20 goals for the year. He has 41 points on the season. I did the heads up against him and Gauthier. $6.2 million, and that's a long-term deal, and there are games, many of them, where Owen Tippet can't hit the broadside of a barn. He is faster than, 85% of the guys he takes the ice against. He probably has a harder shot than like 80% of the guys that he takes the ice with, and yet he hasn't been able to put it together. How much of that do you just put on this tumultuous season, this down year? Is he mentally, not totally there? Like, where are you with Tippett? And like, is there any possibility that the Flyers look at this and go, ooh, it might be worth having a conversation? Maybe you weren't willing to have a conversation around his name in the trade market. Like, do you think that they get to that point this offseason and they go, nah, put a new coach in charge, see how he plays?
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna look to move him this offseason. It's definitely a slightly disappointing year. I mean, you had progression over the last 2 years. Like 2 years ago, he had a good year. He was even better, slightly better last year. And so you thought, okay, maybe he's that kind of guy who's going to get, incrementally better as he gets a little bit older with a little bit more experience. And then he took a step back this year. Not a big step back, but a step back. But ultimately, with the cap situation, what it is, I'm not really worried about the contract so much. I just think that the Flyers probably expected more out of him, and they're not getting it. And so now you look at Owen Tippett and you say, all right, well, where does he fit going forward? Is he good enough to, does he still project in your mind as a second line winger, or is he more of a third line winger? And if he is, then that's fine. But let's not expect him to be more than that. Like if this guy scores between 22 to 28 goals a year, and he's a 50-point player at $6.2 million with the cap going up, that's not awful. It's right now it's probably looks less, right? But with the cap going up over the next few years at $6.2 million, that's roughly what guys in that productivity, grouping are going to be making. And, does he stand out from that group? No. But is he, is it an albatross of a contract? Also no. It's probably just about average. So I think that there's a little bit of disappointment there, but I don't think it's like, oh my God, what an awful, terrible contract. How did they ever think to do that? It's not one of those either. I just think it's one of those meh kind of guys, right?
Bundy, do you think that the losing and this season just being what it was, and maybe the feelings with the coach in the locker room for a lot of the season, do you think that might have had an impact on a guy like Tippett, on the confidence? Or do you just think it's one of those years where he just doesn't perform?
I think there's a lot of things that he can still do to improve his game. I don't think it was all because of the way the team went, but I do think that he flowed with it. I think when the trade started happening, I really think Tippett was really affected by it. When they lost Morgan Frost and Farabee, he looked like, they're good friends of his. And then when Lawton got traded, it looked like he really dipped off even more. So, yeah, I do feel like he was definitely got caught up a little bit maybe in all the stuff that comes along with the trades and a changing team. That he's now become an important cog on in terms of the way they paid him. But I do. I do think he was one of the guys that didn't benefit really well from what went on. And I think that probably hurt him a little bit down the stretch. He's been a lot better since Torts was fired. He looks like a much more relaxed hockey player on the ice as well, as do a lot of guys, to be quite honest with you.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that there was a tough time for Tippett dealing with that. He was really close with all the guys that went out of here. And so I think that there was some impact there. I don't necessarily think that he was really in the former coach's good graces, or particularly liked the former coach all that much. I think that, since the firing, he's looked like a little bit different of a player. And that's maybe good for him. And so maybe, you look at it and say, let's see what it looks like next season. And if you get a lot of the same thing again next season, then it's a telling thing, right? Then you kind of have a little bit better understanding of it. But he's ultimately going to be, in the same ballpark he's been the past 2 years. Like, I don't know. Do you view that negatively overall? Like, I don't think it's a major negative. I don't think it's something that you get there and go, oh my God, this is awful. But I also don't think it's a, you don't just say, oh, it's okay, everything's fine. It's another year of evaluation there. That's what it is.
I think so much of it, though, I think that the way that you kind of have to frame some of this is like, in a nutshell, like if you view it in a vacuum, is Owen Tippett 2 years from now, when the cap percentage comes down, his AAV relative to an increase in cap, does it hamstring you? Does it prevent you from making a move? No, it probably is okay. What's that smile about? What's so fucking funny, giggly bits?
Somebody is watching and just texted me and Bundy something that was very funny. That's all. Cannot say it on the show. Yeah.
Okay.
I can guess.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. That's all right.
There it is.
Yeah. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's funny.
Okay. I think what people want to see is that there is a step being taken, that there is progress being made with some of these players. And what we heard at the beginning of the year is think about all the great things that Torts does to develop these players and look at all the steps that these guys are taking. And if we're being fair here, it is kind of hard to see the year-over-year improvement of a lot of these guys. We're talking about players that have regressed. We talked about guys like Farabee and Frost that did not progress. They got moved out of town. You have a guy like Tippett who's regressed. You have a guy in like Tyson Forster.
I don't want to say it's I don't want to look. See, I think that you when you say that he regressed, is having a similar season to the previous 2 seasons regression, or is it just he kind of treaded water? Like, I don't look at it as a regret. I don't sit there and look at Owen Tippett and go, he didn't have a terrible season. Like, it wasn't an awful season. Like, oh my God, how bad was he this year?
Right.
He just didn't progress beyond where he was the previous 2 seasons. So I think it was kind of just that's not a regression. Like,
you
because
progress, you plateau, or you regress. There are 3 functionalities here.
Well, you don't know.
Say that he's plateaued.
Well,
right?
correct. But I think that there's probably a 4th, and it's just that he is what he was. Like, plateauing would mean that you cannot go further, right? Like, you've reached your peak, you've reached your point. That would mean you've plateaued, right? I think this is more like he didn't progress, but he also didn't regress. He's not, and he may not have plateaued yet. We don't know.